Morning and welcome to Coffee and Conversation with David Frederick, Assistant Deputy Director, China Strategy Center, National Security Agency. Now please welcome INSA Vice President of Policy, Bishop Garrison.
Thank you and good morning. We're very happy and honored to have all of you join us today. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, and truly we hope you do, please submit them through the question box on the right of your screen. We have just over 400 registrants today, so we're very excited about this programming, and we're going to do the best we can to get to as many questions as we can. We are pleased to welcome members of the press. This is a reminder that the program is on the record and it is being recorded. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Roger Nichols, Chief Growth Officer with Freedom Consulting Group, who will introduce our speaker. Roger, over to you.
Thank you, Bishop, and good morning. On behalf of Freedom Consulting, I'd like to thank INSA and the work they do to advance collaborative solutions to our community's most pressing challenges. Freedom was founded on the principle of finding the best people for our team and giving them the tools, support, and benefits required to positively impact critical mission space for the best customers in the world. For the better part of 2 decades, Freedom has served as a trusted advisor, partnered with the NSA and intelligence community, providing software development, GeoInt, cloud, and data management services to support critical mission space. We strive to bring innovative technical solutions and subject matter expertise to the IC's most challenging issues. I'm pleased today to introduce today's speaker. David E. Frederick is the NSA's first ever Assistant Deputy Director of the agency's China Strategy Center. In this capacity, he sets and directs agency-wide mission strategy for addressing the People's Republic of China, prioritizes mission investments, and postures NSA to achieve greater near and long-term mission outcomes. Most recently, Mr. Frederick served as the Executive Director of U.S. Cybercom. In that position, he assisted the commander in leading the Cyber Mission Force with a portfolio focused on strategic management initiatives, including innovation and academic partnerships. His intelligence career started in the United States Army as a signals intelligence analyst and Korean linguist, before joining the NSA as a language analyst. Please join me in welcoming David Frederick.
Roger, thanks a lot. Really happy to be here today and have the opportunity to talk about the great work we're doing here at the National Security Agency.
Fantastic. Again, thank you, David, so much for making time out of your busy schedule for this. We know how much is going on right now out in the world, and it really means a lot that an official of your magnitude with your portfolio would take your time to have this conversation. First off, this is a new position that you're in, just as Roger mentioned. So what prompted the NSA to create this position, and what are the goals and overall priorities that you can discuss?
Bishop, again, thanks a lot for having me on today, and great kind of starter question, kind of explaining the new role. So, yeah, I'll start with the national security strategy, and the national security strategy highlights that China is the only competitor that we face that has an intent to redesign the international rules-based order, and increasingly the capability to do so. And so China is growing its capability in every domain: diplomatic, economic, military, informational, ideological, and trying to position itself to upend the current order and kind of replace the United States as the preeminent power on the globe over the next couple of decades. And so both the U.S. and China kind of view this next decade as a decisive decade in that strategic competition. China made a significant pivot in 2017 from taking an approach where they tried to kind of build consensus and cooperation across the international community to a much more aggressive position, asserting itself more dominantly across a number of domains. And so within that context, General Nakasone and the leadership team here at NSA took a step back last year and assessed how NSA was postured to address the PRC challenge. and decided that we needed a senior leader at the agency level to drive both near-term and long-term mission outcomes on China. And so my role is the Assistant Deputy Director for China. So I'm a member of our board of directors here at the agency. I work directly, for Joe Nakasone, and just get up every day and think about what else can we do to align strategy and align execution and mission to achieve the outcomes we need to achieve to support the nation. So the role encompasses both our SIGINT mission and our cybersecurity mission. So I'm charged with setting the overarching priorities, making the investment decisions for our China mission, and aligning efforts to achieve that strategy. So to help me with that, we've created a small staff called the China Strategy Center, and it's really a strategic management construct. You could think about the way we are organizing as kind of a hyper matrix kind of structure. So it's kind of a matrix approach, but at the agency level, where we have a small staff team designed to develop the strategy, which we're very, very close to publishing, align investments, align risk management decisions across the agency, monitor performance, and also, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, potentially, also ensure that we are focused on the future. And so there's so much going on and so much demand for NSA support in both SIGINT and cybersecurity. It can become easy to get too focused in the near term. And we have a lot of investments focused on improving our near-term performance. But we have a future concepts division within the China Strategy Center whose role it is to really help us think about uncertainty in the long run and make sure we're also making good bets on investments that posture NSA to succeed and to support our policymakers and our warfighters in the long run. So would be happy to talk a bit more about that and what we're doing in that space and then trying to drive innovation.
You've given us so much foundational knowledge. Just to really kick this off, I think that was a good primer for going more deeply into some of these questions. So, well, first, the focus on the future is amazing, but I want to take a step back and kind of look at the past, and particularly your previous assignment as Executive Director of Cyber Command. Can you tell us how that role prepared you and helped to shape your view of the overall China mission space as you step into this new position?
Absolutely, Bishop. So, it was a great experience being able to serve as a civilian in a military command in a senior role. I guess the key point is that China is the pacing challenge for the whole Department of Defense. And so in Cyber Command, we were very focused on the China problem, both from a context of the role of defending DoD information networks and defending the nation against cyber attack. China was very, very active in targeting DoD information networks. And there is a now really multi-decade history of the PRC attempting to target U.S. critical infrastructure as well, going back some really early work that you can find on DHS's website, a study that they did with FBI all the way back to 2010 when the PRC was targeting oil and natural gas pipelines, which DHS and FBI assessed was, really the only plausible reason to do that was to posture for, potential conflict and potential cyber attack. So Cybercom is very concerned in monitoring China as one of its, major areas in the defense mission to make sure that DoD networks were secured against PRC malicious cyber activity, and working with our interagency partners to further secure U.S. networks. And then on the support to joint force side of the mission, Cybercom was working really closely with Indo-Pacific Command, who has the lead within DoD for deterring the PRC and being prepared for crisis and conflict. And so really tight partnership between Indo-Pacific Command, Cyber Command, and NSA. And so my last role as Executive Director, I was in a position to shape that, be aware of what we're doing there. Really helped me that and the job right before that, working as the Deputy Cybersecurity Director at NSA, really kind of helped me get a good grasp on the cyber element of the PRC problem.
Yeah, and funny you should mention Indo-PACOM, because we're going to be speaking with the J2 in the coming weeks with our president, and they're really going to have a dynamic conversation that's going to, I think, really hit on a lot of what you're laying out here in reference to China, and particularly, as you mentioned, the pacing threat. So it's kind of to pull that thread a little bit more, and I want to make sure I get the language very clear as I pull it directly here from some of my notes. But ODNI, in their 2023 annual threat assessment, they made it clear, kind of in the same way that you did, the cyber threats posed by the PRC. And the exact quote is, China probably currently represents the broadest, most active and persistent cyber espionage threat to U.S. government and private sector networks. And that's very much in line with what you've laid out here. So just as some of the questions that come off of that, what is the NSA doing to understand and detect and defend against the cyber threat? As you mentioned, a lot of that has to do with critical infrastructure and some of the issues that we've seen, and it tends to be a telltale sign of other persistent activities that may be at play or may be coming about. And then, so that's one part of it, but then what are the trends that you're seeing in that cyber capability? Something you've kind of already hit on, talking about the future of this persistent threat. And then what can you tell us about what help our allies are providing, such as Japan, for instance, who to defeat that cyber threat in the area, in the region?
Great questions here. So first, kind of back to the annual threat assessment and kind of our view of the challenge in the contested kind of environment with China in cyberspace. So China, a couple of points on that. One is scale, right? So the PRC has a massive force focused on cyber operations, and so that creates a unique challenge for NSA and the broader interagency team that we work with on defending against PRC malicious cyber activity. What I think NSA brings to the team, the broader team, is kind of the unique environment and ecosystem we have. NSA is really an interesting agency because of the multidisciplinary aspect of our workforce and our mission. So we've got an environment that kind of enables development of deep talent, deep expertise, and a lot of different disciplines. And we're able to bring together, Chinese linguists with PhD level computer scientists and engineers to work on these hard problems. And so a couple of aspects, that when I look at kind of NSA's contributions to the broader fight, and it really is a whole of community effort. Really close partnership with CISA, FBI, U.S. Cyber Command, and others, and of course our Five Eyes partners, but also a growing partnership with the private sector. And so our unique kind of advantage that we bring is unique expertise and unique insights about what the PRC is attempting. And a couple of areas I would highlight recent improvements, I think, in how NSA is operating in this space. One is our engagement with the private sector in the role that we now have to better protect the defense industrial base. And so that was a mission assigned as part of the broader DoD responsibility to serve as sector risk management agency to protect, to support the defense industrial base cybersecurity posture. So we were assigned a broader mission a few years back to support the DIB, and we're doing that through our Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, which is and for somebody who grew up until really 2016, I was on the intelligence side of the mission, and so experiences like talking in public here or engaging in
something you do so much. I see all the time.
Yeah, it was pretty a natural experience, to be honest. But with the stand up the Cybersecurity Directorate and the creation of Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, we've really built a capability to collaborate with industry, both the defense industrial based companies and the broader service provider and cyber threat analysis companies to collaboratively share information and share our analysis. I think the model is working really well, and it's beneficial in both directions. We're able to shed unique insight, shed unique information on the problem that helps our defense industrial base network defenders. And often the DIB and the cybersecurity community is able to provide us unique leads and tips as well. And so that's an area I'd focus on. In terms of trends, something that we're watching closely is evolution of the PRC's on-net tradecraft. And An item I would highlight for the audience is to take a look at the recent cybersecurity advisory that we published in partnership with our interagency and Five Eyes partners, called Living Off the Land. And essentially what the team had discovered, and this was a joint effort between industry and government, putting together different pieces of the story. We uncovered that the PRC developed a capability to basically exploit some home and office SOHO routers as a pathway to the target networks of interest. They were able to exfiltrate password hashes from the networks, the targets of interest, the networks they were targeting. And then after that, we're able to operate and look like a normal user on the network. And that technique enabled them to escape and evade most endpoint detection and response capabilities. So most of the commercial kind of endpoint and detection response settings, you just wouldn't be able to distinguish them from a normal user. And they were also able to evade kind of normal logging setups, right? So we worked as a team to get some actionable advice out, the recommended approaches that network operators could use to monitor and watch for these activities. And so I think that's a good example, both the trend we're seeing in advanced level of sophistication by the PRC, and also the benefit that interagency and public-private sector partnerships bring to bear when it comes to dealing with the nation's most sophisticated cyber adversary. On the final part of the question about alliances, I would highlight, I've already kind of talked a bit about the Five Eyes, but just would highlight that we're working really closely with INDOPACOM and a number of partners in the Pacific to both bolster the cybersecurity posture and also share information about best practices. And part of that is, this more public role that we're playing in terms of publishing. We're publishing our cybersecurity advice more publicly than we did in the past, and so that's helping kind of lift all boats. But we do have some, great work underway to strengthen cyber defenses in the Pacific, and some partnerships emerging that I think is going to help us across the board in the region over the next few years.
That's fantastic. You kind of, I had a question that I was coming out that you've already kind of hit on about intelligence sharing and about overall what we're doing with our allies in the region. I guess one additional piece I'll ask on it is, do you feel that the NSA has the support it needs right now today in the region when we talk about INDOPACOM to be successful in that mission? It sounds as though that is the case, or at least trending that way, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Sure, it's a good question. So I think we're trending in the right direction, and we are making important investments in capabilities that enable us to be more effective in the Indo-Pacific region. There are differences, right? It's a big pivot for us as an agency from our focus on counterterrorism for 20 years, a mission that we're still executing very effectively. But the pivot to focus more on strategic competition and on the PRC particularly, it's a big shift for the entire Department of Defense and the entire intelligence community. So we're certainly still in the midst of change. And basically, if everything was settled, I wouldn't have a job. So working pretty hard to get all that aligned. Certainly trying to make some hard prioritization decisions. We can't do everything everywhere. So we're looking really hard at how we prioritize mission efforts. One of the unique kind of aspects of the Pacific is just the size of the theater and the amount of time zones it spans. So that presents some interesting challenges in terms of operations and support. And another aspect of it, I would say, is differences in how alliances are arranged in the Pacific. So the United States has a number of bilateral alliances. We have a growing number of multilateral engagements, but a lot of the alliance structure in the Pacific is bilateral, unlike NATO and Europe. And so that presents its own kind of challenges in terms of managing efforts and priorities to make sure we're fully aligned. But overall, I would say things are tracking well. The key for us is to remain super focused on our customer and the commands we support. And in the case of the theater, we're really focused, of course, on U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. NSA is a combat support agency. We've got responsibilities to support Indo-Pacific Command with both intelligence and with cybersecurity advice to help harden and protect their networks. And certainly in a crisis and conflict, ensuring that our warfighters are able to securely operate and communicate is a critical mission for us. And so I feel very good about where we're at in that mission posture. Always work to improve, but overall in a good place there. I also am optimistic about how Indo-Pacific Command and the IC is evolving our partner engagements in the Pacific. Just one example I would give you: the U.S. and Japan have established a bilateral intelligence analysis cell that Indo-Pacific Command is sponsoring with their Japanese counterparts about a year ago. And so that gives just is the kind of all source intelligence level engagements that create kind of the foundation for NSA to be able to plug in and provide indirect support via Indo-PACOM. So think overall we're heading in the right direction there.
No, fantastic, and thank you so much for your the level of detail and transparency that you're giving in a lot of these answers. We were already getting in a bunch of questions from the audience that really highlight some of the exceptional comments that we've already had from you. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a pivot over to some of these, and one of them goes back to your point about better protection of the defense industrial base and better collaborative efforts with the private sector companies. So this one comes from gentleman Patrick Wilson. He has more than 90% of technology innovation comes from consumer tech at this point, from the private sector. So how do companies need to best focus to work with the IC? Most companies say it's really arduous, really difficult and complicated to deal with DoD and the IC particularly because of being small businesses. So in your view, what's the problem and how can they get over this barrier?
That's a good question. Yeah, and I think we acknowledge it's tough, right? I mean, the DoD and IC requirements and processes can make it hard for new companies to kind of get in and break in. I am optimistic about where DoD is heading in that space with the increased emphasis on the Defense Innovation Unit, who they were great partners for me over in U.S. Cyber Command, and the work that's underway. For example, Deputy Secretary Hicks just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago talked about did a speech about innovation in what she's doing to drive acceleration of intake of new ideas into the department. NSA is part of the DoD and part of the IC. We're in that mix of lots of regulations, lots of requirements, and a process, an acquisition process that doesn't always move as fast as I would like. I think what I would like to see is more early engagement about overarching requirements. And when I say requirements, I don't mean specifications, but broad challenge problems. What are some of the innovation challenge problems? I think that's something that the DoD could and NSA could improve upon, is how do we communicate about our innovation gap, our strategic gaps in a way that helps small companies and medium-sized companies think about ways to plug in and bring value. The other point I would make on innovation is we are working within my new organization to better align multiple innovation activities within NSA and across with our IC partners to focus on the China problem. And so we'll be working with industry and the defense industrial base partners. We'll hear more about this in the upcoming months. It'll probably be end of the calendar year, early next calendar year before we kind of fully launch this. But you'll be hearing about some opportunities to come and talk about potential solutions related to our challenge problems to feed a new innovation pipeline that we've established, that we're going to establish. We have not launched this yet, but it's in my action list for the next 6 months that we'll be kicking off a new innovation pipeline called Red Ventures that's meant to reach out to industry and also internally to our workforce to look for a whole range of solutions to our hardest problems. And so more to follow on that in the upcoming months. I guess, like I said, I'm guessing we'll probably kick this off early next calendar year, be my best guess. We're still working on development of the concept right now.
Yeah, so this is just fantastic, some of these upcoming timeline pieces. So before we get away from the tech and innovation piece, we got a couple of other great questions come in. So in your view, how does China's advancements in AI and machine learning in the national defense arena compare to DoD? We know that AI can be a tremendous force multiplier right now in terms of a variety of strategic and kinetic activity. In the future, as we're continuing to develop a lot of these technologies. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, great question. I will not attempt a full net assessment between DoD and the PRC for a couple of reasons. One, I'm certainly not qualified to do that, and it would be really hard. But let me lay it out in this context, and it relates right to the key focus areas for our upcoming new strategy on China here at NSA. Technology security is a critical area of competition between the United States and China. And some PRC officials have gone as far as to state that they view technology as the main battlefield between the United States and the PRC. And so the PRC has been focused on they have a Made in China 2025 goal that has got the country focused on very specific sectors where they want to dominate over time. It's a very challenging set of objectives. So I'm not sure if they'll hit them all, but they have a lot of capacity and they're pushing pretty hard. Some of the areas they're focused on include semiconductors, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, robotics, smart manufacturing, new material science, and I'm sure I've missed a couple of others. But we, from a technology security point of view, there's a couple of areas that NSA can play a role. One is we obviously, as an intelligence agency, we want to help generate insights and share information to our policymakers so that our policy community can understand what the PRC is attempting to do and support efforts to ensure that we maintain a level playing field and interoperable, kind of free and open interoperable internet, basically protect the United States from coercion. So a real concern is if the PRC is able to strengthen its control of key supply chains, and this doesn't apply only to technology sectors, but it's certainly a major concern there, is that we could be subjected to economic coercion as we've seen them apply to other countries. And so we've got a role in the intelligence side of the mission to provide insights in that context. And then on the cybersecurity side of the mission, I would want to highlight two areas of technology that I'm concerned about. One is ensuring that we are supporting U.S. efforts on technology standards. We have an important role to play there, given our deep expertise in the computing sciences and telecommunication sciences in particular. And then secondly, we're very focused on AI, and I'm certainly expecting a question on AI. AI is transforming the world. It's really changed things the last year. I would add the second transformative technology that could really change the strategic environment over the next 10 or 15 years or 20 years is quantum computing. And so when we see eventually a breakthrough where quantum computing is cryptanalytically relevant, or can enable a nation state to break classic encryption, traditional encryption, it's going to put a lot of national security systems, a lot of sensitive information at risk. And NSA is working very hard on that right now to get quantum resistant encryption algorithms out, and recently worked with the NIST to publish some guidance for the critical infrastructure community, for example, to get companies thinking now about the changes they have to make over the next years. It's because it's not something they can start to implement, the day a cryptanalytically relevant quantum computer is revealed, companies need to be investing in that eventual future now. And so we've recently published some guidance on our website about getting ready. So how do entities assess their readiness and develop a roadmap to a quantum secure kind of environment in the future. So those are some areas I'd highlight on the tech security piece. I have incredible confidence in the U.S.'s ability to dominate in key technology fronts, but we have got to take this competition seriously. We are certainly the global innovation power today, but we don't want to lose that, and we cannot be complacent or underestimate China's capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, in some recent remarks, yesterday, I believe, as a matter of fact, Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall said intelligence couldn't be clearer. In his opinion, China's prepared for war. And from some of your comments previously, we talked about the critical infrastructure piece again, and infrastructure threats that we've seen through China's efforts with cybersecurity attacks. Do we see, to the extent that you can even address it, to be clear, what preparations potentially are we seeing from China around potential warfare? And in your thoughts, how might China use the cyber warfare piece connected to and in tandem with any potential kinetic activity?
Bishop, excellent question. Yeah, so the PRC has been on a path for a number of years now to design a military force with really one objective in mind, and that is to prevent the U.S. from intervening in an invasion of Taiwan. And so the focus of their force design and their military modernization has been to develop a very capable missile force that includes the DF-21 and DF-26 missiles designed to strike an aircraft carrier, design an ISR system around that missile force to enable targeting, build up their Air Force and Navy. So they're now in the Asia Pacific region, they have the largest Air Force and largest Navy. And also bolster the credibility of their nuclear deterrence. And so by DoD's estimate, by 2035, the PRC will have 1,500 nuclear warheads. It's just one example of that. The multi-domain aspect of this doesn't stop with kind of the conventional land, ground, ground, air, sea domain, but it extends into the space and cyberspace domains. And so in the space domain, the Space Force, the chief of the Space Force a few months back commented at the Munich Security Conference, in fact, about that China has developed operational space weapons, and it presents our major concern in terms of space conflict. In the cyberspace environment, I've already mentioned that we've got indications all the way back to that 2010 to 2012 timeframe, and more recently, that the PRC would use attacks on critical infrastructure as part of a conflict, and they would, in that context, not only aim to achieve disruptions to a U.S. military plan, but also induce societal panic. And so I think all of us can see even how lower threat events with Colonial Pipeline as an example, lower threat events can cause significant societal disruption. And so, we have to take that threat very seriously. And why, for me, the number one focus we need to have, not only in DoD and in the intelligence community, but across the U.S. economy, really across the U.S. private sector, is cyber defense. How do we continue to strengthen and get network security in place that enables cyber defense of critical infrastructure? A key factor. Another area that I worry about, and we're focused on in the cyber space, information space, is the PRC's conduct of malign influence campaigns. And so they do conduct misinformation, disinformation campaigns, and they have growing leverage in the global social media environment that could enable them to conduct very broad information operations, at a very large scale in case of conflict. I will emphasize that we're not beating the drums of war here and thinking that China is going to attack anytime soon or anything. But our number one goal is to support our policymakers, our diplomats, and our warfighters to ensure deterrence, because a conflict in the Pacific would be very damaging for everyone involved and really for the world. And so, our focus is on what can we do to deter, but also as a combat support agency, how do we how can we take steps to be ready and prepared to support Indo-Pacific Command if required. So I think that's kind of my view on it, on the military challenge, and certainly it's a focus area for us as a combat support agency here at the National Security Agency.
Yeah, fantastic. And I want to kind of connect a workforce question to a lot of what you just laid out again around pacing challenges and the potential kinetic and cyber warfare activity and threat. And I think we have time for maybe just about one more question, maybe this one and one after this. But given the pacing challenges we've talked about, and they're graduating an extraordinary number in their own workforce of PhDs in key disciplines like quantum physics and quantum computing and data science and AI, as you mentioned, and many of them tend to be, as we're continuing to see, and this is a trend that's existed for some time now, but many of them are actually educated here in leading American institutions. So how are we going to address our own growing talent base to counter that expertise, experience, and potential expertise gap overall?
It's an excellent question, and given just the sheer difference in size of the PRC demographically in the United States, we can't play man-to-man basketball against the PRC, that's for sure. Yeah. And so how do we look at programs that, one, encourage our best and brightest students to go into national security careers? How do we reach out very broadly to our universities and colleges around the United States to make sure that we are bringing in a diverse workforce that's got the skills we need to compete? And it's a whole range of skills. It runs everything from Chinese language, which is a challenge for the United States when you think about the fact that English is taught very broadly in China. That's not the case in the United States. However, I would note that the last census results indicates that Chinese is the third most spoken language at home in the United States. I was very surprised by that, actually, as I was getting up to speed in this new role. So we have 2.9 million people in the United States that speak Chinese at home. And so on the Chinese language problem, part of my challenge for our workforce team is, hey, how do we get out there and reach these students? Are we doing everything we can to look for innovative opportunities to reach out to students that maybe haven't thought about working at the National Security Agency or in the broader IC or broader defense industrial base, and inspire and encourage them to do so? And so on the language side, we need students that can learn and master Mandarin. And we need students that can understand the social cultural dynamics of China. We've had early conversations here at NSA with some of our academic liaisons and our academic engagement office about ways that we can engage both regional universities and colleges, but really reach out to students and encourage them. On the engineering and computer science front, for the national security community, the big challenge is just the overall talent shortage in the United States across cybersecurity, computer science, and engineering. So that's a shared challenge across with the private sector, and that we've got to try to make a compelling case to young people to work with us versus go for more pay. The government can't outspend itself against the private sector. It's just not feasible. But I am energized about what we're doing in terms of some special salary incentives to enable hiring of computer scientists and engineers with a little bit more competitive pay package. And then a real focus for us is how do we create an environment here where we get them excited, we bring them in, we let them work hard problems that they can't work in the private sector, and encourage them to commit a part of their professional career at least to service to the nation. So I think a lot of it's going to be about outreach to the community and communications. I do think there could be broader improvements across the educational landscape in encouraging and building programs that kind of grow the ranks of Chinese linguists, grow the ranks of cybersecurity professionals, and grow the ranks of computer scientists would certainly be helpful.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And going back to kind of a comparison, a metaphor you made with as we get close to the NBA preseason, for instance, you mentioned that we can't play man-on-man basketball really when it comes to some of these issues. When it comes to China in this way, and China, to their credit, they're looking for different ways to influence the rest of the world as they look to kind of push us in a strategic competition. So. For our last question this morning, as we're getting very close up on time, can you address China's expanding influence, for instance, in South America, in a region we don't necessarily always hear with regard to China, but their influence in South America, particularly as it relates to IT infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a good example and a great question to end on. Of the nature of this competition, right? It really is a global strategic competition. And so folks that have worked the China problem for a long time kind of get it, but people that haven't been focused on China don't appreciate kind of the scope and scale of what the PRC is trying to do at the global level. So, they have had for a number of years invested in the Belt and Road Initiative, which is heavily focused on loaning money to countries to build infrastructure using Chinese firms. They're starting to see some, I think, buyer's remorse would be a way to describe that, some pushback from the global South. And so it's been a big investment focus for them in South America, Central America, Africa, the Pacific Island nations, and Central Asia. And they have another program called the Global Development Initiative that's kind of similar. It really comes down to a competition both economically and ideologically. And so part of what the PRC is doing is trying to export a different model of governance, a different model of digital governance, a model involving that supports authoritarianism and supports surveillance of domestic populations. And so they've made some inroads with authoritarian governments in the South and in the global South, and the United States is now working to address that and kind of compete with that. And so that is an area for NSA, where we've got to be, provide broad support to our policymakers and our commanders and diplomats. And then finally, I'll just kind of highlight that, and I kind of mentioned this as we're talking about the military threat, but just highlight, the challenge the United States has is we want to deter aggression and compete in the sense of fair competition. So I don't think the U.S. is afraid of competing with China, and we've got a strategy focused on that. How do we though ensure that we really understand the PRC's intentions and develop a proactive approach? And so that's what the policymakers are focused on, and the demand signals that we're getting as intelligence professionals is helping us to shape and focus in on those topics. But we do see a growing demand signal for support on global topics related to PRC, and we'll be adjusting to that in our new strategy. And then finally, I'll just highlight the other area that's interesting with the PRC U.S. competition that's different from, in some cases, the Cold War with the Soviet Union, is the interdependence. And there's a deep economic interdependence between the United States and China. And there's also areas where the national security strategy highlights that we need to come up with ways to cooperate. And so on these transnational challenges. And so certainly a very complex problem for our policymakers, warfighters, and diplomats. And NSA's, we're doing our best to kind of align our intelligence efforts to support the nation's strategic priorities.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, David. Your closing thoughts here were just absolutely tremendous. And I know we at INSA really appreciate it, and I can only imagine how much the audience has appreciated the information in this informative discussion. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to have you again with us soon.
Thank you, Bishop. It was a great discussion, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank all of you for joining us this morning. Thank you again to Freedom Consulting Group for sponsoring today's event. And for all of you for watching online, thank you for joining us. When the webinar ends, there will be a short survey that pops up. So please, if you can, take a few moments to complete it and let us know how we did. Let us know your thoughts on today. And now quickly, I just want to run through some upcoming program. So for those of you in the DC region, on Wednesday, September 27th, we will hold a new IC, and that is a full day symposium focused on the challenges and opportunities we face in building a talented, diverse IC workforce. Just as David, mentioned how important the workforce is related to things like strategic competition vis-a-vis China. We have a terrific speaker lineup, including keynotes from Carmen Medina, former senior official at CIA, as well as NCTC Director Christine Abizade. You can view the full agenda on our website at INSA, INSAonline.org. We will return to virtual programming with a September 28th coffee and conversation with NGA's CIO Gary Buchanan. And on October 13th, the INSA Foundation webinar focused on gaining the information advantage, data, and tradecraft with CIA's Director of Open Source Enterprise, Randy Nixon, and McDonald's Global Head of Intelligence and Executive Protection, Ryan Long. And finally, I would also like to highlight an event that INSA hosts each year to recognize outstanding early and mid-career professionals who have already made significant impacts on national security. That is the INSA Charlie Allen Achievement Awards. These awards recognize emerging leaders from all sectors of our community, government, civilians, military personnel, homeland security, including first responders, contractors, and researchers, as well as the more senior professionals who mentor them. I encourage you to nominate a colleague, a coworker, or client. I can tell you these awards, they mean a great deal to the recipients, and this is the kind of recognition that is so vital to our retention opportunities. The deadline for these nominations is Tuesday, October 31st, Halloween. You can learn more about all of these programs on our website, INSAonline.org. And that concludes this morning's programming. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a wonderful day.